The unforeseen encounter. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a pale glow over the quiet, empty road. Tana Jones, a seasoned officer with a storied career in law enforcement, gripped the steering wheel of her sleek, midnight blue sedan. Her heart beat steadily, not out of fear, but out of a simmering frustration. As she glanced into her rearview mirror, the red and blue lights flickered ominously, cutting through the serene night. Another traffic stop, just what she needed after a long day at the precinct. She pulled her car to a slow stop, her mind racing with the all-too-familiar thoughts. The exhaustion of her career weighed heavily on her shoulders. Despite her rank as the new chief of police, she was still a black woman navigating a world riddled with prejudice. Each stop was a reminder of the systemic biases that plagued not just her profession, but society at large. Tonight, however, she was determined to turn the tables on the usual narrative. As the two officers approached her car, Tana inhaled deeply, steadied her breath, and reminded herself to remain calm. She had seen this scene play out many times before, and she recognized their demeanor immediately, hands hovering over their holsters, eyes narrowed with suspicion. They did not know who she was, but tonight would be different. Tonight, she would show them the power of humility and respect. "Step out of the vehicle," one officer barked as he reached her window. He was tall and imposing, his face set in a rigid frown that suggested he was ready for conflict. The second officer stood a few paces behind him, his hand poised over his gun, mirroring the tension in the air. Tana sighed but maintained her composure. Experience had taught her the importance of not reacting impulsively. Any show of frustration could be twisted against her. Instead, she opted for calm authority. Without a word, she handed over her license and registration, her eyes catching the officer's name tag, Officer Porter. He snatched the documents without so much as a glance at her, muttering something under his breath to his partner. As they retreated to their cruiser, Tana's mind drifted to her past, flooded with memories of countless traffic stops that felt less like law enforcement and more like harassment. Growing up in a low-income neighborhood, Tana had learned early on that being a young black woman came with a heavy burden. She watched friends and family endure scrutiny, harassment, and unjust arrests. These experiences fueled her desire to change the narrative from within the system. She had not joined the police force out of hatred, but rather a deep-seated need to foster trust between the community and law enforcement. The road to becoming the chief of police had been littered with obstacles. She had faced doubt and prejudice at every turn. From her training days, where male counterparts questioned her capabilities, to her time as a patrol officer, where promotions slipped through her fingers, each step required relentless perseverance. Finally, after years of determination and hard work, she had earned her position. Yet, the reality of her race and gender continued to overshadow her accomplishments. The two officers, oblivious to her achievements, had reduced her to a mere statistic, a stereotype that fit their preconceived notions. Minutes ticked by, thick with tension. Finally, the officers returned to her window, the atmosphere crackling with unresolved hostility. Officer Porter leaned down, his expression tight with irritation. "Step out of the vehicle," he ordered again, his tone sharp and devoid of respect. Tana raised an eyebrow, her heart racing slightly at the absurdity of the situation. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked, her voice smooth and composed. "We've had reports of suspicious activity in the area," he replied, his eyes avoiding hers, revealing an unease that contradicted his authoritative stance. "And do I match the description of this suspicious activity?" Tana pressed, refusing to let him off the hook so easily. Porter narrowed his eyes, clearly annoyed by her questions. "We're just following protocol, ma'am. Now step out of the vehicle." Feeling the tension escalate, Tana knew she had to navigate this moment carefully. She unbuckled her seatbelt slowly, making sure each movement was deliberate and controlled. She wasn't merely stepping out of her car. She was stepping into her role as a leader, one that these officers had yet to acknowledge. Once outside, Porter moved closer, his hand resting on his belt as he surveyed her with a hard stare. "We need to search your vehicle," he said, his words leaving no room for negotiation. Tana's eyes narrowed slightly, her mind racing with indignation. "You don't have a warrant," she replied, crossing her arms over her chest. He smirked, a smile dripping with arrogance. "We don't need a warrant when there's reasonable suspicion." "Reasonable suspicion? What exactly are you suspicious of?" Tana challenged, her tone calm but firm. The silence that followed was thick with unspoken tension, a battle of wills unfolding in the cool night air. Porter hesitated, the crack in his authority evident as he searched for a reason that eluded him. With frustration evident on his face, he resorted to force. "Hands on the hood, ma'am. You're resisting a lawful order," he snapped, his voice rising with the unmistakable authority of someone used to getting their way. Tana stared at him, disbelief flickering in her eyes before she composed herself. This wasn't just a routine stop. This was a glaring example of systemic racism, playing out in real time. As Porter grabbed her arm and pushed her against the car, the cold metal of handcuffs clicked around her wrists. Anger bubbled beneath her composed exterior, but she fought to keep it in check. At that moment, she had a choice: reveal her identity and the authority she held, or wait until the full weight of their mistake bore down on them. She chose the latter. "You're making a big mistake," she said quietly, her voice low but steady. Porter didn't respond, his face set in stone as he fastened the cuffs around her wrists. Tana remained silent, knowing that the lesson these officers were about to learn would be one they wouldn't soon forget. This was not just about her. This was about every individual who had been unjustly targeted. Every black man and woman who had been treated as less than because of the color of their skin. As the officers prepared to take her to their cruiser, Tana's mind whirred with possibilities. This was just the beginning, the unraveling of authority and the emergence of the truth. The quiet night air seemed to thicken with anticipation, the promise of change hanging just out of reach. Little did the officers know, they were about to confront not just the new chief of police, but the embodiment of a movement, a force for change they had yet to understand. The weight of authority. The metal of the handcuffs pinched Tana's wrists, but it was the weight of the moment that felt truly constricting. As Officer Porter led her toward the back of the cruiser, she could hear the distant hum of traffic on a nearby highway. The rhythmic pulse of the world around her seemed so starkly different from the intensity of this encounter, creating a surreal contrast that underscored the absurdity of the situation. Tana felt a mix of emotions surge through her: frustration, anger, but most importantly, a deep resolve. She knew that this moment was bigger than her. It was a reflection of the systemic injustices that countless individuals face daily, many without the means or position to challenge it. Tonight, however, she had both the power and the responsibility to make a statement. As she approached the cruiser, her mind raced with strategies and potential outcomes. Her instincts urged her to reveal her identity, to show them the badge of authority she wore not just on her uniform, but in her very essence. But the strategy required patience, a careful orchestration of events that would allow the officers to fully comprehend the depth of their error. "Turn around and place your hands on the vehicle," Porter instructed, his voice laced with authority. Tana complied, her heart pounding not from fear, but from the anticipation of the lesson about to unfold. She could sense the incredulousness lurking beneath the surface of this encounter, an unspoken disbelief that someone like her could hold such power, that a black woman could rise to the top of a predominantly white institution. As she leaned against the cooled metal of the cruiser, Tana reflected on her journey, the years of hard work and sacrifice that had brought her to this pivotal moment. She recalled her first day at the police academy, a place that had felt alien in so many ways. Surrounded by a sea of faces that didn't resemble her own, she had felt the weight of their expectations, the whispers of doubt that accompanied her every step. But with each challenge, she had grown stronger, more determined to carve her own path. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice steady as she felt the tension in the air. "What do you think justifies this treatment?" Porter hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. "It's just protocol," he replied, though the words felt hollow even to him. "Protocol," Tana echoed, a note of incredulity creeping into her voice. "And yet here I stand, a black woman in a luxury vehicle, pulled over on a quiet street in the middle of the night. What exactly about me screams suspicious?" "Ma'am, you need to understand," he started, but Tana interrupted. "No, you need to understand. This isn't just about me. This is about every black person who has been pulled over simply because of their skin color. You're perpetuating a cycle of fear and mistrust that is ingrained in our society." The weight of her words hung in the air, heavy and unyielding. Tana had long been aware that her position allowed her a platform, but this was an entirely different stage. This was her opportunity to confront the very individuals who were meant to uphold the law, yet often distorted it through bias and misunderstanding. "Step back from the vehicle," Officer Porter ordered, regaining his composure. Tana could sense his need to reestablish control over the situation. He waved his partner over, a rookie who had yet to grasp the nuances of law enforcement. "Keep an eye on her," he instructed, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. "I'll check the vehicle." As Porter moved around the cruiser, Tana felt a flicker of hope. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment where she could show them that authority came not from intimidation, but from respect and understanding. "Do you know who I am?" she asked, her tone deliberately calm, aiming to catch them off guard. The rookie officer glanced at her, confusion evident on his face. "No, ma'am. But it doesn't matter. You're still being detained," he replied, his voice lacking the conviction of someone fully aware of their authority. Tana let out a small, humorless laugh. "You think it doesn't matter? It matters a great deal. I am the chief of police for this precinct." Silence enveloped the space between them. The rookie's face fell, a mixture of shock and realization dawning on him. "You're the chief," he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. Porter, who had been rummaging through her car, suddenly froze. The weight of Tana's words hit him like a freight train. He turned slowly, his expression shifting from arrogance to disbelief. "What?" "Let me help you out," Tana continued, the confidence in her voice radiating through the tension. "You have just unlawfully detained your superior officer. You've subjected me to unnecessary scrutiny based on nothing but my appearance. Do you understand the implications of this?" The moment felt electric, crackling with the energy of change. Tana stood tall, her posture exuding authority, even with the handcuffs binding her wrists. The rookie shifted uneasily, and for the first time, she could see uncertainty in Porter's eyes. "Ma'am, he started, but Tana cut him off. "I'm not here to make this a personal matter. Officer, I want you to understand the impact of your actions. You can't go around treating people like this based on preconceived notions. Your biases are clouding your judgment, and it's harming not just individuals but the entire community." She paused, allowing the weight of her words to sink in. "As officers, you have a responsibility to protect and serve, to ensure that justice is applied equally, not selectively. Tonight, you had the opportunity to demonstrate that commitment, but instead, you chose fear." Porter shifted on his feet, visibly uncomfortable. Tana could see the gears turning in his mind as he began to realize the gravity of the situation. I didn't know," he admitted, his bravado waning. Tana saw the rookie's eyes widen as he pieced together what had just unfolded. "You didn't know, and that's the problem," she replied, her tone firm but not unkind. "You're in a position of authority, yet you are perpetuating the same cycle of injustice that many of your colleagues have. You need to recognize your privilege and use it to uplift, not to oppress." The tension that had once been thick and suffocating began to dissipate, replaced by an atmosphere of reflection. Tana could sense the shift, a dawning awareness in both officers. This was not merely a confrontation. It was a moment of reckoning, an opportunity for growth. "Let's do something meaningful," Tana proposed, her voice steady. Instead of this ending in humiliation for you, let it serve as a lesson. I'm going to file a report about this incident, but I'm willing to meet with both of you afterwards to discuss implicit bias and the importance of community policing. This can be a turning point. Porter and the rookie exchanged glances, uncertainty etched on their faces. But deep down, Tana knew she was planting the seeds for change. Think about it, she continued. This isn't just about your careers. It's about the community we serve. We can either work together to bridge the gap or allow these barriers to continue to grow. Tana watched as realization washed over the rookie officer's face. I want to understand. I want to do better, he said, his voice resolute. Good, Tana replied, a small smile breaking through her serious demeanor. Change begins with dialogue, and that's what we're going to do. With that, Porter's demeanor shifted completely. The once defensive officer took a step back, visibly shaken by the encounter but open to Tana's proposition. I apologize, Chief Jones. I didn't see you as who you are. I saw only a statistic, he admitted, his voice heavy with regret. Apologies are a good first step, but action is what matters, Tana said, her tone softening. I appreciate your honesty, and I look forward to working with you both to make this precinct a better place for everyone. As Porter moved to unlock the cuffs, Tana felt a surge of hope. Perhaps this encounter, rooted in misunderstanding and bias, could transform into a catalyst for change. Now, she added, stepping back from the cruiser, let's take this conversation to the precinct, shall we? With the moon casting a gentle light on the scene, the three of them walked back toward the cruiser, 2 officers and their new chief, each carrying the weight of the night's events. But instead of despair, there was a glimmer of hope, the collective commitment to understanding, respect, and a promise of change that would ripple through the precinct and beyond. Tana's journey was far from over, but this night marked a turning point. The lessons learned would not just impact her, but also the community she had sworn to protect. The road ahead was long, but with every conversation, every moment of honesty, they were paving the way toward a brighter future, one where understanding triumphed over prejudice, and respect became the foundation of their shared mission. The meeting of minds. As Tana, Officer Porter, and a rookie officer, who introduced himself as Officer Lee, arrived at the precinct, a palpable tension still hung in the air. It wasn't just the weight of the earlier confrontation, but also the anticipation of what lay ahead. This was an opportunity for growth, not just for them, but for the entire department. Stepping into the precinct, Tana felt a rush of familiarity mixed with a sense of responsibility. The walls, adorned with accolades and commendations, were a testament to the hard work and dedication of many officers over the years. Yet they also stood as reminders of the systemic issues that had plagued the force. Tonight, Tana was determined to change that narrative. Let's gather in the conference room, Tana suggested, her voice steady and authoritative. Porter nodded, leading the way with a newfound respect, while Officer Lee followed closely behind, clearly eager to learn. As they entered the conference room, Tana noticed the stark fluorescent lights reflecting off the polished table, illuminating the space filled with chairs that had witnessed countless meetings and discussions, many of which had likely glossed over the very issues they were about to confront. Take a seat, Tana said, motioning for both officers to sit down. She followed suit, positioning herself at the head of the table. Before we begin, I want to express how important it is for us to have this conversation. We're not just here to address a single incident. We're here to dismantle the biases that have influenced our work, and by extension, our community. Porter and Lee exchanged glances, a silent acknowledgement of the weight of her words. Tana could see the gears turning in their minds, the initial defensiveness giving way to curiosity and understanding. Let's start with the basics, Tana continued. What biases do you believe exist within our department? Porter leaned forward, a thoughtful expression on his face. I think there's a tendency to profile certain individuals based on their appearance or the neighborhoods they come from, he admitted. I never thought I was doing it myself until tonight. "I've seen it too," Lee chimed in, his voice steady. "We often get calls about suspicious individuals, and it's hard not to fall into the trap of assuming someone is a threat based on their race or clothing." Tana nodded, encouraged by their honesty. Acknowledging the problem is the first step toward creating change. But what's crucial is understanding why this bias exists. It's rooted in systemic issues that have been perpetuated for generations. How do you think we can combat this within our own department? There was a pause as both officers contemplated her question. Tana could sense the gears of their minds working, and she was hopeful they would arrive at the right conclusions. "Education is key," Porter suggested, his voice gaining strength. "We need training that goes beyond the basics. We should focus on implicit bias and community relations." "Absolutely," Tana replied, her enthusiasm palpable. "I believe in fostering relationships between our officers and the communities we serve. We can organize workshops that include community leaders, activists, and residents. It's important for us to listen to their experiences, understand their perspectives, and find common ground." Lee nodded vigorously. "That makes a lot of sense. We could also involve schools, so younger generations understand that law enforcement is there to protect them, not to instill fear." Tana smiled, encouraged by their enthusiasm. "Yes, building trust is essential. It's about showing that we care and that we're willing to listen. This is not just about enforcement. It's about building partnerships." As the discussion progressed, Tana noticed how engaged both officers had become. They began sharing their own experiences. Porter talked about a recent interaction with a community member that had escalated due to his assumptions, while Lee recounted an instance where he had misjudged a youth simply based on their appearance. "I think sometimes we forget that behind every call we respond to, there's a person with their own story," Lee remarked, his voice filled with sincerity. "I want to do better, but I need the tools to do so." Tana appreciated his honesty. "You're not alone in this. Change doesn't happen overnight, and it requires all of us to be open to learning. We must encourage each other to challenge our assumptions and recognize the humanity in every individual we encounter." As they continued to brainstorm ideas, Tana felt a surge of hope. These two officers were starting to grasp the essence of her vision, not just for their department, but for the community they served. They were beginning to see that effective policing was not solely about enforcing the law, but about fostering understanding and building relationships. After an hour of deep dialogue, Tana decided to shift the focus slightly. "I want to discuss your roles moving forward. As officers, you have the power to be change agents in this precinct. How do you envision implementing what we've discussed?" Porter leaned back thoughtful. "I think it starts with us leading by example. We need to engage more with the community, attend local events, and actively participate in discussions about policing. We can be the bridge between the department and the public." "That's an excellent point," Tana encouraged. "Community policing is not just a program, it's a philosophy. You both have the opportunity to shape how our officers engage with residents. By being visible and approachable, you can help dismantle the barriers that have caused distrust." Lee added, "Maybe we could also start a mentorship program where officers are paired with community members. It could help break down stereotypes on both sides and create understanding." "I love that idea," Tana exclaimed, her excitement contagious. "By investing in relationships, we foster trust and accountability. It allows us to serve the community more effectively and helps residents feel valued and heard." The discussion continued, ideas flowing freely as the officers gained confidence. They discussed implementing regular community forums, engaging local schools, and providing transparency about police procedures and policies. Each suggestion built upon the last, creating a vision for a more inclusive and equitable policing strategy. After several hours, the meeting began to wind down. Tana could see the enthusiasm in both officers' faces, a spark of determination igniting within them. They were no longer just following protocol. They were becoming advocates for change. "I want to thank you both for your willingness to engage in this conversation," Tana said, her voice warm with appreciation. What we've started here tonight can lead to a significant shift in how our department operates and how we connect with our community. Porter looked at her, his expression sincere. I'm sorry for my actions earlier, Chief. I didn't see you for who you truly are, and I understand now how damaging that can be. Tana smiled gently. We all have room to grow, and that's okay. The important thing is that we're willing to learn from our mistakes. Lee added, I'm excited about the future and the impact we can have. Let's make sure this isn't just a one-time conversation. We need to keep the momentum going. Absolutely, Tana affirmed. This is just the beginning. I'm looking forward to seeing how we can implement these ideas and create a culture of inclusivity and respect within our precinct. As they wrapped up the meeting, Tana felt a profound sense of accomplishment. They had taken a significant step toward addressing the biases that had long plagued their department. But she also recognized that the work was far from over. The next morning, she would present their discussions to the rest of the department. She knew that there would be resistance, pushback from those who preferred the status quo. But Tana was ready to face it. She had a vision for change, and she was prepared to advocate for it with the same tenacity she had shown throughout her career. As she left the precinct that night, Tana felt an exhilarating mix of hope and determination. The road ahead would be challenging, but she was not alone. With officers like Porter and Lee by her side, she believed that together they could foster a new era of policing, one rooted in understanding, respect, and accountability. Tana's journey was a testament to the power of dialogue and the potential for transformation within individuals and institutions. As she navigated the complexities of her role, she remained committed to her mission, to reshape the narrative around policing, to break down barriers, and to empower not just her officers, but the entire community. The ripples of change. The morning sun rose slowly over the precinct, casting a warm golden light that spilled through the windows and illuminated the faces of officers bustling about their daily routines. Tana Jones stood at her desk, taking a moment to breathe in the atmosphere. This place had been her battleground, her sanctuary, and now it was becoming the heart of a movement she had only begun to cultivate the night before. Her thoughts drifted back to the meeting with Officers Porter and Lee. Their willingness to engage in difficult conversations had inspired her. They had discussed strategies, ideas, and actionable steps to bring about change. And now it was time to share those ideas with the rest of the department. Tana could sense the skepticism that might arise. Not everyone would be eager to embrace the necessary transformations, but she was resolute. The department had long needed a wake-up call, and she intended to be the catalyst for that change. Tana gathered her notes, outlining key points from last night's discussions, and steeled herself for the meeting ahead. As she entered the main conference room, a mix of familiar and unfamiliar faces greeted her. Officers, detectives, and support staff filled the seats, chatting amongst themselves, but the atmosphere shifted as soon as she took her place at the front of the room. The chatter subsided, and all eyes turned to her, a mix of curiosity and apprehension evident in their expressions. "Good morning, everyone," Tana began, her voice steady and confident. "Thank you all for being here today. I know that many of you are familiar with me as the new chief, but today I want to talk about something far more significant than titles or ranks. I want to discuss our role in the community and how we can better serve it." She paused, allowing her words to resonate. The murmurs of skepticism filled the air, but Tana pressed on, undeterred. "Recently, I had an encounter that served as a stark reminder of the biases that exist within our ranks. I was pulled over by two officers who, unbeknownst to them, were detaining their chief. This incident prompted deep reflection on the nature of our work and how we interact with those we serve." A few officers exchanged glances, and Tana noted the shifting atmosphere as she continued. "We are here to protect and serve, but how can we do that effectively if we allow preconceived notions and biases to cloud our judgment?" The room was quiet, the weight of her words sinking in. Tana could see that she had their attention. I met with Officers Porter and Lee last night, and we had an open and honest conversation about implicit bias and community policing. We discussed the need for transparency, for education, and for a commitment to change. Today, I want to extend that conversation to all of you. Tana could feel a flicker of resistance in the air. A senior officer, Detective Martinez, raised his hand. "Chief, with all due respect, some of us have been on the force for years. We've built our reputations based on experience. Why should we change what has worked?" Tana appreciated his candor. "I understand where you're coming from, Detective, but I ask you to consider this. The world is changing. Communities are evolving, and with that, our methods must adapt. What worked in the past may not resonate with the public today. Our job is to build trust, and that requires a willingness to listen, learn, and grow." Another officer chimed in. "But how do we change something that's been ingrained in our training? How do we shift mindsets that have been established over decades?" Tana took a deep breath. "It begins with education and dialogue. We need to implement training that goes beyond the basics. We need workshops focused on implicit bias, community engagement, and understanding the historical context of policing. It's crucial that we recognize how systemic issues impact our interactions with the public. We must foster a culture of accountability and transparency." The room was still, a sense of unease mixing with intrigue. Tana pressed on, determined to engage them further. "Let's consider the community we serve. Many residents have faced injustices at the hands of law enforcement. We need to acknowledge that pain and work actively to rebuild trust. I propose that we establish regular community forums where residents can voice their concerns, ask questions, and engage with us directly. We can learn from them, and they can learn about us." Detective Martinez's expression softened slightly. "That could work, but what about our safety? How do we ensure that we're still protecting ourselves while trying to connect with the community?" Tana nodded, recognizing the importance of this concern. "It's essential to strike a balance. Community policing doesn't mean we compromise our safety. It means we approach our interactions with a mindset of partnership. We can involve community leaders in discussions about safety measures and how they can assist us in creating a safer environment. It's about collaboration rather than confrontation." Another officer, Officer Jenkins, raised his hand. "Chief, this all sounds good in theory, but there will be resistance. Not everyone will want to change their ways. How do we handle that?" "Resistance is part of any transformative process," Tana replied firmly. "We have to be prepared to face it with patience and understanding. Change takes time, and it requires us to lead by example. Those who resist will see the benefits of our efforts through the results we achieve. If we consistently demonstrate our commitment to change, it will be hard for them to argue against it." As Tana spoke, she could see some officers nodding, a flicker of understanding lighting their expressions. She pressed on, fueled by the belief that she could inspire this team to rise to the occasion. "I want to establish a mentorship program, pairing seasoned officers with newer recruits and community members. This program would focus on sharing experiences, fostering understanding, and working together to develop strategies for effective community engagement." "Wouldn't that take time?" another officer asked. "We're already stretched thin." "Yes, it will take time," Tana conceded, "but it's an investment in the future of our department and our community. We must prioritize building relationships, even if it means adjusting our schedules or reallocating resources. The long-term benefits will outweigh the initial challenges." After an hour of discussions, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Officers were no longer resistant. They were engaged. Questions flowed, ideas blossomed, and a palpable sense of urgency filled the space. Tana felt a renewed energy coursing through her as she witnessed the transformation taking place. "I know this is a lot to digest," she concluded, "but I want you all to leave here today knowing that this is not just about changing policies or procedures. It's about changing lives, our lives and the lives of the community members we serve. Let's commit to this journey together. As the meeting came to a close, Tana felt a wave of optimism wash over her. This was a pivotal moment for the precinct, a step toward a more inclusive and respectful approach to policing. While the path ahead would undoubtedly be fraught with challenges, Tana was ready to face them head-on, armed with the support of her officers. Over the next few weeks, Tana and her team rolled out a series of initiatives. They organized workshops on implicit bias, inviting community leaders and experts to speak about their experiences. They launched community forums where residents could openly discuss their concerns and interact with officers in a more personal setting. At first, attendance was low, but Tana remained undeterred. She knew that trust took time to build. Gradually, word spread throughout the community about the changes taking place within the precinct, and attendance began to grow. Residents expressed gratitude for the open dialogue, and officers began to share their own experiences and challenges. One day, during a community forum, a local activist named Jasmine stood up to speak. "I'm glad to see you all here, but I want to know, how will you ensure that these conversations lead to real change?" Her voice was passionate, her eyes fierce with determination. Tana met her gaze, feeling the weight of the question. "That's an excellent point, Jasmine. We need accountability. I will ensure that we follow up on the issues raised here and report back to the community on the actions we take in response. This is not a one-time conversation. It's an ongoing dialogue. We want you to hold us accountable." Jasmine nodded, clearly appreciating the sentiment, but still skeptical. "Words are easy. We want to see action." "I understand," Tana replied earnestly. "Change won't happen overnight, but it begins with us being here, listening, and taking your concerns seriously. We're committed to making real change, but we can't do it without you." The dialogue continued, with residents sharing their experiences and frustrations. Tana could feel the energy in the room shifting, a collective acknowledgement that they were embarking on a journey together. With each forum, trust grew and barriers began to crumble. As the weeks turned into months, Tana observed remarkable transformations not only within her precinct, but also in the community's perception of law enforcement. Officers who had once approached their work with skepticism began to see the humanity in their interactions. They learned to approach situations with empathy, seeking to understand rather than to control. One afternoon, as Tana walked through the precinct, she overheard Officers Porter and Lee discussing their experiences at a recent forum. "I was surprised at how open the community was," Porter said. "It's like they want to work with us instead of against us." Lee nodded. "I think we're finally starting to break down those walls. I had a young man approach me last night and thank me for my willingness to listen. It felt incredible to connect with someone on that level." Tana couldn't help but smile as she listened to their conversation. She had seen firsthand how far they had come, and it filled her with hope for the future. Change was happening, and while it wasn't perfect, it was progress. However, Tana knew that the journey was far from over. She still had to confront the deep-seated prejudices that lingered within some members of her department. She had received mixed feedback from senior officers, many of whom were set in their ways and resistant to change. But Tana was committed to creating a culture of accountability, and she wasn't about to back down. During a department meeting, she addressed this very issue. "I understand that change can be uncomfortable," she began, her voice steady. "But we cannot ignore the realities of the world we live in. We have a duty to protect and serve everyone, and that means challenging our own biases." The atmosphere grew tense as some officers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Tana knew that there would be resistance, but she had to confront it head-on. "I'm not asking you to abandon your values or your experiences. I'm asking you to consider how we can grow and evolve together. Change is not an indictment of your work. It's an invitation to be better." After the meeting, Tana approached Detective Martinez. "I appreciate your contributions, but I can sense your hesitance about these changes. Can we discuss your concerns?" Martinez sighed, looking worn but willing to engage. "I'm just worried that we're losing the essence of what policing is about." It feels like we're being asked to compromise our safety for the sake of perception. Tana leaned in, her voice earnest. I hear you, Detective. But I believe we can enhance our safety by fostering relationships with the community. When people trust us, they're more likely to collaborate rather than resist. We can do our jobs effectively while still being seen as allies, not adversaries. Martinez studied her for a moment, a flicker of understanding crossing his features. Maybe you're right. I've seen the impact of building trust in my neighborhood. It's just hard to let go of what I know. That's okay, Tana reassured him. We all have our comfort zones, but growth happens when we step outside of them. I'm committed to helping you through this process. Let's work together to find solutions that honor both our responsibilities and the needs of the community. As their conversation unfolded, Tana felt a shift in the air. It was subtle, but it was there, a growing acknowledgement that they were all in this together. She had seen the potential for change not just within her officers, but within the community as well. Days turned into weeks, and as Tana continued to advocate for transformation, the precinct began to embody the principles she had fought for. The walls that had once separated officers from community members were gradually dissolving, replaced by bridges of understanding and collaboration. With each passing day, Tana felt more confident in the direction they were heading. She had faced resistance, challenges, and moments of doubt, but her belief in the power of dialogue and connection kept her focused. She knew they were building a foundation for a new era of policing, one rooted in empathy, respect, and genuine partnership. The journey was far from over, but with every conversation, every moment of vulnerability, they were reshaping the narrative. Tana felt a sense of purpose that propelled her forward, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, united with her team and community in the shared pursuit of justice and understanding. Unraveling the past. Months rolled on, and the precinct was alive with a palpable energy that Tana had never felt before. The initiatives she had implemented began to take root, not just as programs, but as a new way of life for the officers and the community they served. Tana had become a symbol of change, a beacon of hope for both the department and the community. Yet, despite the progress, Tana felt a lingering tension. The undercurrents of resistance were still present, especially among a few senior officers who clung to the old ways. One morning, as Tana walked through the precinct, she could hear snippets of conversation that piqued her interest. Officers were discussing a recent incident involving a local youth who had been wrongfully accused of vandalism. The chatter was filled with indignation and disbelief, but also a touch of skepticism about the young man's character. I don't care what anyone says. That kid is trouble, she overheard one officer, Sergeant Billings, remark. His tone was dismissive, laced with a familiar air of superiority. You can't just go around letting these kids think they can act out without consequences. Tana felt a spark of frustration ignite within her. Sergeant, she interjected, her voice steady but firm. What happened to that youth should concern all of us, regardless of our preconceived notions. He is someone's son, brother, and neighbor. If we're not willing to approach this situation with understanding, we're part of the problem. Billings turned to face her, a challenging look in his eyes. With all due respect, Chief, that kid was caught red-handed. We have to uphold the law, not coddle those who break it. Tana took a deep breath, reminding herself of the delicate balance she needed to maintain. And how many times have we wrongly judged someone based on their past or their appearance? This isn't just about enforcing the law. It's about ensuring justice is served fairly. We have a responsibility to investigate thoroughly and treat everyone with respect, regardless of our assumptions. A few officers in the room shifted uncomfortably, clearly caught in the middle of a philosophical battle. Tana pressed on, determined to steer the conversation toward a constructive path. Let's talk about what led to the accusation. Was there an investigation? Were there witnesses? What are we doing to understand the full context of this situation? Billings crossed his arms, clearly unwilling to budge. What are we supposed to do? Let him go free because we feel sorry for him. That doesn't help our community. Actually, Tana replied, it does. Building trust with our community means showing that we care about individuals, not just numbers. If we jump to conclusions and treat everyone as a suspect, we'll only deepen the divide between us and the people we serve. They need to see that we are fair and just. After a moment of silence, an officer in the back spoke up. I think the chief has a point. If we treat people like criminals, we're only reinforcing their beliefs that we don't care. It's our job to lead by example. Tana felt a surge of gratitude for the support, but she knew that the path ahead would require more than just encouragement. We need to be proactive in our approach. I suggest we establish a community outreach team that focuses on engaging with youth, helping them understand the consequences of their actions while also providing support and mentorship. Why should we waste our resources on kids who don't want to change? Billings countered, his voice dripping with skepticism. Because they are our future, Tana stated firmly. We can't afford to lose another generation to the cycle of misunderstanding and mistrust. If we invest in them now, we can help build a safer and more cohesive community. Billings opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, another officer interjected. What if we bring in community leaders to help with this outreach? People who already have a rapport with the youth might be more effective in fostering relationships. Tana nodded vigorously. That's a great idea. We can partner with local organizations and schools, creating programs that teach leadership, responsibility, and provide positive role models. Let's show these young people that we believe in them. Slowly, the mood in the room shifted. Officers who had been skeptical began to express interest. Conversations sprang up about potential partnerships and strategies, and Tana felt the tide turning. They were beginning to understand that change was not just an abstract idea, but a tangible possibility that could transform lives. As the meeting came to a close, Tana felt a wave of relief. Perhaps she could make inroads even with the most resistant members of the department. Yet, deep down, she knew that the real challenge lay ahead. After the meeting, Tana sat down with Officers Porter and Lee to discuss the next steps. I feel like we've made some progress, but we need to keep the momentum going, she said. We should organize a community event to launch our outreach initiative. Lee's eyes lit up. What about a block party? We could set up booths with resources, activities for kids, and food. It would give us a chance to interact with families in a relaxed setting. That's perfect, Tana replied, energized by the idea. Let's also include some local musicians and performers. We can showcase community talent and create a positive atmosphere. This is our chance to show that we are here to support and uplift. Porter added, we could invite community leaders to speak about the importance of unity and collaboration. It's not just about policing. It's about building relationships. They spent the next hour brainstorming ideas, mapping out logistics, and discussing potential partnerships. The excitement in the room was palpable, and Tana could sense that they were on the verge of something meaningful. As the date for the block party approached, Tana poured her heart into planning. She reached out to local organizations, businesses, and community leaders, garnering support and resources. The event quickly transformed from an idea into a vibrant reality, bringing together officers, residents, and families in a celebration of unity. On the day of the event, the precinct parking lot was transformed into a bustling hub of activity. Colorful banners flapped in the breeze, tables were laden with food, and the sound of laughter filled the air. Tana stood at the entrance, welcoming guests as they arrived, her heart swelling with pride. As families began to mingle, Tana took a moment to observe the interactions. Officers were engaging with community members, laughing with children, and sharing stories. It was a beautiful sight, a representation of the change she had long envisioned. Later in the afternoon, as Tana took the stage to speak, the energy was electric. She looked out at the crowd, diverse faces representing various ages, backgrounds, and experiences. Thank you all for being here today, she began, her voice ringing with enthusiasm. This event is about more than just food and fun. It's about building relationships and creating a stronger, safer community together. The crowd cheered, and Tana continued. Today marks a new chapter in our precinct's history. We are committed to serving this community with respect, understanding, and transparency. We are here to listen to you, to learn from you, and to work alongside you. Together, we can break down the barriers that have divided us for too long. As she spoke, Tana could feel the energy in the crowd shifting. Officers and residents were beginning to connect, forging bonds that transcended the traditional barriers of law enforcement. After her speech, Tana made her way through the crowd, stopping to chat with families and local leaders. She felt a sense of belonging, a warmth that enveloped her. Amidst the laughter and celebration, Tana spotted Jasmine, the activist from the previous forum. She approached, her demeanor relaxed and open. "Hey, Chief," Jasmine greeted her with a smile. "This is incredible. I never thought I'd see the police department doing something like this." Tana smiled back, her heart swelling with pride. "Thank you, Jasmine. It's a step in the right direction. We want to build trust and show that we're here to support the community." "I can see that," Jasmine replied. "You're changing perceptions, and that's powerful. I'm glad to see more officers getting involved and engaging with the youth. They need to know they have allies, not just authority figures." "I appreciate your support," Tana said sincerely. "We're all in this together. If we can empower our youth, we can create a brighter future for everyone." As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow over the event, Tana felt a sense of hope wash over her. She could see the beginnings of transformation within her department and the community. The barriers that had once felt insurmountable were starting to crumble, replaced by bridges of understanding and collaboration. But as the night wore on, Tana knew that this was just the beginning. She had only scratched the surface of what was possible. The road ahead would be filled with challenges, but she was ready to confront them head-on. The laughter of children, the sound of music, and the warmth of community filled the air as Tana continued to move through the crowd. Each conversation she had reinforced her belief that real change was possible. It was within reach, not just for her department, but for the entire community. With renewed determination, Tana committed herself to the journey ahead. She was ready to lead her officers and her community toward a future rooted in empathy, respect, and mutual understanding. A future where they could all thrive together. The day was a testament to the power of unity and the potential for change when people come together for a common cause. Tana felt a sense of purpose that fueled her forward, ready to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead, united with her team and community in the shared pursuit of justice and understanding. Seeds of transformation. The weeks following the block party were transformative for the precinct. The event had not only fostered a sense of community, but had also sparked a new energy among the officers. Tana witnessed a shift in attitudes and a willingness to engage in difficult conversations. The ripple effects of the outreach initiative were beginning to take shape, and she felt invigorated by the potential for lasting change. However, Tana knew that the true test of their progress would come when faced with challenges that could easily unravel their hard-earned momentum. One crisp autumn morning, as the sun broke through the clouds, Tana received a call that would put everything to the test. "Chief, we have a situation developing in the Eastwood neighborhood," Officer Lee reported, urgency lacing his voice. "There have been reports of increased tension between residents and a group of youth who've been accused of vandalism. Some residents are demanding action, and we need to address it before it escalates." Tana felt a knot tighten in her stomach. The Eastwood neighborhood had been one of the most underserved areas in the city, and she knew that tensions had been simmering beneath the surface. "I'll be there shortly," she replied, her mind racing with strategies. As she drove through the bustling streets, Tana reflected on the importance of maintaining the dialogue they had worked so hard to establish. This was a pivotal moment that could either reinforce the progress they had made or send them spiraling back into distrust. Upon arriving in Eastwood, Tana was greeted by a scene that was unsettlingly familiar. A small group of residents stood outside their homes, arms crossed and faces etched with concern. A few officers were present, trying to maintain a semblance of order, but it was clear that tensions were high. Tana approached the gathering, her presence commanding attention. "Good morning, everyone. I'm Chief Jones, and I want to hear your concerns. Can we talk about what's happening?" A woman stepped forward, her expression tense. "Chief, we're tired of these kids thinking they can run wild in our neighborhood. There's been damage to property, and nobody seems to care about what we're going through." "I understand your frustration," Tana replied, maintaining her calm demeanor. "But I want to ensure we address this in a way that doesn't escalate tensions further. Let's discuss what happened and find a solution together." As the woman explained the incidents, Tana listened intently. Residents spoke about feeling ignored and the fear they experienced living in a neighborhood where they felt powerless. It became evident that the vandalism was not just a surface-level issue. It was intertwined with deeper social challenges, including economic instability and a lack of opportunities for the youth. "I hear you," Tana said, her voice steady. "We need to address the root causes of this behavior rather than simply react to it. I propose we set up a community meeting to discuss how we can create positive opportunities for these kids, ways to engage them constructively rather than push them away." At that moment, Officer Porter joined Tana, having just arrived on the scene. He nodded in agreement. "We've also been looking into the idea of creating a mentorship program that pairs local youth with officers. This way, we can build relationships and provide guidance." A murmur of skepticism rippled through the crowd, but Tana pressed on. "We can't afford to let fear dictate our actions. If we want to change the narrative, we have to start by building trust with our youth. Let's bring the kids into the conversation instead of pushing them away." The residents exchanged glances, some nodding while others remained unconvinced. Tana could feel the weight of their concerns, but knew that genuine change required a leap of faith. "Can we at least get more patrols in the area until things settle down?" another resident asked, her voice tinged with anxiety. "Absolutely," Tana assured her. "We will increase our presence in the neighborhood and engage with residents and youth alike. But we need your input on how best to do that. We are here to serve you, and that means listening to your needs." Gradually, the tension in the air began to lift. Tana felt a glimmer of hope as conversations turned from anger to constructive dialogue. By the end of the meeting, the residents were willing to consider her proposals. Afterward, Tana, Porter, and Lee huddled to discuss their next steps. "This is an opportunity for us to demonstrate that we're serious about community engagement," Tana said. "We need to plan that community meeting quickly and involve as many stakeholders as possible. I can reach out to local youth organizations and see if we can gather some kids to share their perspectives," Lee offered. "Great idea," Porter added. "We should also involve schools and community leaders. This has to be a collaborative effort." The days that followed were filled with frantic planning and outreach. Tana and her team reached out to local organizations, schools, and community leaders, spreading the word about the upcoming meeting. They crafted flyers, set up social media events, and engaged with local businesses to gather support. As the meeting day approached, Tana felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Would the community show up? Would they be willing to engage with the officers in a meaningful way? These questions lingered in her mind, but she reminded herself of the progress they had made thus far. On the evening of the meeting, the community center buzzed with activity. Tana arrived early, setting up chairs and arranging the space to encourage dialogue. As residents began to trickle in, Tana welcomed each of them with warmth and sincerity. She could see that many were apprehensive, but there was also a sense of curiosity in the air. When the meeting began, Tana took the lead. "Thank you all for being here tonight. This is a chance for us to come together as a community and discuss the challenges we're facing. I want to hear from you, your concerns, your hopes, and your ideas for moving forward." A resident named Marcus stood up. "We're tired of being labeled as troublemakers. Yes, there have been issues, but these kids need guidance, not punishment. They need mentors who can help them navigate their lives, not just officers who show up to enforce the law." Tana nodded, fully agreeing. "That's why we're here. We want to build programs that provide support and mentorship. We want to listen to the youth and understand their needs. How can we better connect with them? Another young woman spoke up, her voice strong. It's hard to trust the police when we don't see them in our lives unless something goes wrong. If you want to change things, you need to be present in our community. Come to our events, hang out at the park, just be part of our lives. Tana felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. These were the voices she needed to hear, the real perspectives of the community. You're absolutely right, she replied. We need to be more visible and more engaged. We're committed to being part of this community, not just enforcers of the law. The conversation flowed freely, with residents sharing their experiences, frustrations, and hopes for the future. Tana watched as relationships began to form, not just between the officers and residents, but among the residents themselves. They were united in their desire for change, and it was beautiful to witness. As the meeting drew to a close, Tana could sense the shift in energy. Thank you all for being so open and honest tonight. I want this to be the beginning of a long-term partnership between the precinct and our community. Let's work together to create programs that empower our youth and build a safer environment for everyone. As the crowd dispersed, Tana felt a sense of accomplishment. This wasn't just a meeting. It was a milestone in the journey toward genuine community engagement. However, Tana knew that words alone would not be enough. She needed to follow through on the promises made that night. The next day, she scheduled follow-up meetings with local organizations and community leaders to discuss actionable steps for creating mentorship programs, youth activities, and engagement initiatives. Weeks turned into months, and the community's relationship with the precinct continued to evolve. They established regular mentorship sessions where officers met with local youth to discuss challenges, aspirations, and opportunities. The program provided a safe space for open dialogue and collaboration, helping to break down the barriers that had long existed. But as the community began to heal and grow, Tana faced new challenges. A particularly high-profile case involving police use of force in a neighboring city drew national attention. The media coverage was relentless, and the public outrage spilled over into protests. The scrutiny on law enforcement intensified, and Tana felt the pressure weighing heavily on her shoulders. During a department meeting, officers expressed their concerns. "We're being unfairly targeted by the media and the public," one officer complained. "It feels like all our hard work is being overshadowed by the actions of a few." Tana understood their frustration, but also knew that they had to confront the issue head-on. "I know this is tough," she said, her voice resolute, "but we can't ignore the reality of what's happening. We must take this opportunity to reaffirm our commitment to transparency, accountability, and community engagement." Billings, who had initially been resistant, raised his hand. "I think we need to hold a press conference to address this. We need to show the community that we're different, that we care about building trust." Tana appreciated his suggestion. "That's an excellent idea, Sergeant. We should invite community leaders and activists to join us. Let's create a united front to demonstrate our commitment to reform and accountability." The following days were a whirlwind of preparation. Tana worked closely with community leaders, officers, and communication specialists to craft a message that resonated with the community's concerns. On the day of the press conference, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Tana stood behind the podium, flanked by community leaders and officers. As she looked out at the gathered crowd, she felt a mixture of hope and trepidation. "Thank you all for being here today," Tana began, her voice steady. "Today, we stand together as a community united in our commitment to transparency, accountability, and reform. We understand the pain and frustration that many are feeling in light of recent events, and we want you to know that we are listening." The crowd reacted, some applauding, while others remained skeptical. "We acknowledge the trust that has been broken in many communities across the country, and we are determined to do everything in our power to rebuild that trust here in Eastwood," she continued. "Together, we have initiated community programs aimed at empowering our youth, providing mentorship, and fostering understanding between officers and residents. We are committed to ensuring that every officer in our precinct is held accountable for their actions, and we will work tirelessly to reinforce the values of respect and empathy in our interactions with the public." As Tana spoke, she could see the faces of the community leaders beside her nodding in agreement. She felt the weight of the moment, knowing that they were standing on the precipice of real change. "We ask for your partnership," she concluded, her voice ringing with sincerity. "We can't do this alone. Together, we can build a safer, more inclusive community where everyone feels valued and respected." After the press conference, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Tana's words had resonated with the community, and many expressed their gratitude for the department's commitment to change. However, the work was far from over. Tana knew that they had to follow through on their promises and continue to engage with the community. In the months that followed, they established regular forums where residents could voice their concerns and suggestions. They implemented new training programs focused on de-escalation tactics and community engagement, ensuring that every officer understood the importance of empathy in their interactions. With each initiative, Tana could feel the shift within the precinct and the community. Trust was being rebuilt, and the officers were beginning to understand their role as advocates and partners, rather than enforcers. One evening, as Tana walked through Eastwood, she encountered a group of youth gathered at the community center. They were laughing, playing games, and engaging with officers who had come to support the youth initiatives. It was a scene that filled her heart with hope. As she approached, a young girl named Mia spotted her. "Chief Jones, come play with us," she called out, her face lighting up with excitement. Tana smiled and joined the group, feeling the warmth of the community envelop her. In that moment, she knew that their journey was not just about policing, but about building relationships, fostering understanding, and creating a safe space for everyone. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the community center, Tana felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The seeds of transformation she had planted were beginning to bloom, and she was committed to nurturing them. The road ahead would undoubtedly be challenging, filled with moments of doubt and resistance. But Tana had faith in the power of community, in the strength of connection, and in the potential for real, lasting change. With each passing day, Tana's vision of a community united in respect, empathy, and understanding came closer to fruition. And as she stood among the youth, officers, and residents, she knew they were all part of something greater, a movement toward justice, equality, and healing. Tana's journey was a testament to the power of perseverance and the belief that change is possible. Together, they were crafting a narrative that honored their collective humanity and paved the way for a brighter future, one rooted in connection and compassion.